It's true. It's been an entire year since I closed down my recording studio, which means I haven't had a studio to work out of for a year. And honestly, I'm going insane. Now, if you're someone that records your own music out of maybe your own home studio or a bedroom or a basement, this is the video for you. I think you're gonna find it informative. Let's dive into it. So like I said, it's been an entire year since I closed down my studio. And to be honest, my old studio was just a basic 16 by 16 room, but it served me well for many years. 19 years, I worked with bands out of that room. People loved it, but at a certain point, it was time for me to build a nicer studio out on my own property. The problem was that I did not expect it to take as long as it's been taking. Here we are, a year later, and as you can see behind me, the studio's not done. But with that being said, it's not all bad. Over the last year, I've made some interesting discoveries, and I've also learned a lot of interesting things about myself. So there have been some negative aspects to not having a studio for a year, but there have also been some positive aspects. And like I said, a lot of this surprised me and I did not expect. But with that being said, let's start with the negative. All right, so the first negative to not having a studio to work out of for an entire year is pretty obvious: a loss of revenue. Now, luckily, I planned ahead and I also have other streams of income to help support me. But still, after working on a business for 19 years and having it go to zero virtually, definitely sucks. Even if it's just psychologically. I'm gonna be honest, it's been weird not producing for this long, or at least not producing in the way that I've always produced. So the loss of revenue, pretty obvious, right? The next one I didn't expect so much, and that's I really miss having a space where I could be loud whenever I want. So for example, if I had the itch to record drum tracks late at 10 p.m. one night, I can't do that right now. If I want to rehearse with a drummer, because I still prefer to have real drummers play on my own music and my own personal projects, I can't do that. Or at least I can't do it in a way that's convenient. And I also can't record a full band live, which I really, really miss. I have a huge passion for live recording. Again, I really miss having the freedom to be able to play loud, record a band in a loud manner, reamp through tube amps, mic up a drum kit whenever I want. Not having it, for me, kind of sucks. The other thing that's happened over the last year that's really been difficult, if I'm being honest, is having to say no to my favorite clients. Now, yes, of course, I can track a record out of maybe a pro studio or rent a space from one of my producer friends, or maybe even record guerrilla style, which is something that I used to do all the time and will continue to do in the future. But the truth is that working on this studio and building it with my contractor and hiring plumbers and garage door people and electricians and hiring a studio designer, going back and forth with the plans, has become a full-time job. So I made the tough decision to not do any projects, not produce any clients until the studio is done. Now, when you've been running a business as long as I have, you often become pretty close and sometimes even friends with some of your best clients. And that's my situation. Some of my clients I've been working with for, again, almost 20 years. And outside of the studio, we're also friends. So not only do I enjoy working with them on a professional level, but we're buddies. Sometimes we're even musical collaborators. And having to turn down a bunch of amazing projects over the last year has not been easy. And also, I am a people pleaser by nature. So having to say no to some of my best friends that I've known for so many years has been like daggers to the heart. Now, the fourth negative is something that I really didn't expect. And that fourth negative is that I really, really miss working with people in person. Now, if you're a viewer of this channel, you might find this surprising because I really don't seem like it. But the truth is, I'm an introvert. As a matter of fact, I tell people this all the time. If I were locked in my house for an entire month, I'd be good. There's an endless amount of books that I could read. There's so much awesome information that you can learn online for free. There's a never-ending amount of music that I could write. Over the last 2 decades of producing, I've found that long, drawn-out projects, like an album, really burn me out. So with that being said, I didn't think I would miss working with people in person, and collaborating with people in person would be something that I would miss so much. Of course, I've always known that I love that aspect of producing, but I'm gonna be honest, I'm going crazy. I literally have dreams, I'm not exaggerating. I have reoccurring dreams of recording drummers in my new studio and working with singers and co-writing with acoustic guitars on singles and EPs. I'm going through withdrawals, which again, I did not expect, or at least not to the degree that I'm feeling right now. So I am not exaggerating. The first week that this thing is built and everything is up and running, I've got a band coming in and I can't wait. So with that being said, let's jump into the positives. The first positive, much like with the first negative, is pretty obvious. I'm saving a ton of money, not spending any money on rent. And I'm also saving a little bit on not spending money on extra gas commuting. Now, yes, the new studio build has not been cheap, but the difference here is that the money that I'm investing into my new studio is forever. I love this house. I plan on owning this property forever. So this will be a fixed asset. Once it's built, it's built. And it's nice to know that it's something that's gonna serve me for the rest of my life and something that I truly own myself. So again, not spending that money on rent has been great. And I love seeing that lower overhead in my QuickBooks account. Okay, this leads me to the second positive that I've been experiencing since closing down my old studio. And that's that the peace and quiet that I experience every day has been absolutely amazing. I don't know if it's me just getting older and more crotchety, but the last year or two at my old building was pretty obnoxious. As I've gotten older, I just don't like loud, obnoxious death metal being bombarded into my eardrums when I'm not in the mood to listen to that. A lot of times at my old building, bands would play with the door open. Guitar players would tune their guitars at the same volume as if they were playing a show. It was really annoying and it was pretty detrimental to some of my later recording sessions. And being here, I don't have to listen to anything, and I don't even have a soundproof studio built yet. And surprisingly, this has been a positive on my mental health because that last year, I was a grumpy boy, believe me. All right, the third thing is something that I definitely did not expect, and that's that the year off from producing has allowed me to fall in love with music all over again. Now, I'm gonna be straight with you. I grinded pretty hard for the last 20 years running this business. I would do a lot of album projects. Early on, I was recording every local band under the sun. I was recording on weekends. It was crazy, especially during those first 3/4 of the business's life. And at a certain point, I stopped listening to music. I started to lose interest in playing. I was kind of burnt out, if I'm being honest with you. And this time away from producing, this extremely long time, the longest I've ever taken off an entire year, has reinvigorated me. I've fallen in love with music and production all over again. I'm playing guitar again, working on personal projects, musical projects, both recording and mixing. It's been awesome. I feel like I'm 20 all over again in a way. Now, another thing that I want to mention in this category of being re-inspired is that the time away from producing and from being away from that studio has allowed me to reimagine my business moving forward. I've done a lot of reflecting and realized that moving forward, I'm only gonna work with clients who I truly, truly, truly love working with. I'm also not gonna do many album projects, and I wanna focus mainly on EPs and singles. Again, it took a whole year off to really learn this about myself, that doing albums, doing projects that go on and on for months, it doesn't really align with where I am today as a person and as a music creator. And I don't think I would have really realized that, or at least not to the extent which I have over the last year, if I didn't have this year off and this year away from producing full time. Okay, and this leads me to the big one, and the thing that surprised me most, and which is probably gonna be the most applicable to your situation if you record at home. And that's that the projects that I have done, the few that I've done over the last year, have been the best sounding, the best mixes that I've ever produced, in my opinion, in my entire career. And here's the funny thing. They were done in my crappy basement and my crappy garage. Completely guerrilla style, cheapo gear, no sound isolation, no soundproofing, no room treatment at all. And again, I'm extremely happy with the results. Now, if you've been watching this channel for any length of time, you know I've always preached guerrilla style recording, not spending a lot of money on gear, not having to have a perfect environment. But to be honest with you, this last year has exceeded my expectations. And I think the reason why is because in my home, away from all the noise where I can concentrate, I'm much better able to focus. Also, it's easier for me to experiment. I had a ton of fun sticking up microphones in random places that you wouldn't typically do in a studio environment, like the corners of my garage or another room in my basement. Even though my old studio was a project studio, it was still a studio-like environment. Now this really fires me up because my new studio is not going to be a typical studio. I kind of had this mentality going in when I had my new studio designed, where I didn't want it to be a typical boring live room and control room. And I'm happy to say that the testing that I've done at my house throughout the last year has proven to me that I've made the right decision. And again, it further proves the point that I always preach, that you don't need fancy gear. You don't need a perfectly acoustically treated room. What you need is the knowledge and the system to follow when you produce your music. Now, I care about you and I want you releasing music that you are proud of. So because of this, I'm offering you access to my polished production checklist. It's a simple, straightforward PDF download that outlines all the steps that I take when I produce a track from scratch. The thing is, most people skip over these steps and they're hardly talked about on the internet, and it's a shame because it's where the real results come from. And the good news for you is that it has nothing, I mean nothing, to do with gear. It's all in the approach and the plan that you follow when you record and mix your music. Again, you can download it for absolutely free. There's a link below in this video's description. Now, if you're interested on diving deeper and learning why I decided to make the tough decision to close my old studio and build my own studio, check out this video. Until next time, drink that Rippin' Roasters.